Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted to collect. Let me try that again. It's been a long day. Delighted to connect in real-time space with Jeremy Fuscaldo. Jeremy, I know your work from social media, out on the web in different places, creating and advocating for comics and sharing images of the work that you've done. And I know that you have interest in a variety of ways of storytelling. So glad to have you on.
Glad to be on here, Jason.
A pleasure, a pleasure. By means of a first kind of introductory origins question, I'm an English teacher, so I'm always curious about what connects people with storytelling and comics and things of this visual nature that you and I both seem to love.
Great. Um, so I grew up in suburban neighborhood, and often frequented the local library in in town and also in high school and kids
Mhm.
school as well. So I read a variety of books, both comics and illustrated books. And So I think your question was, what was my experience with comics growing up first, or just my background?
Mhm. So sort of maybe what initially grabbed you and then how things developed from there.
Yeah. Okay. So I think growing up, I had an experience with the visual medium of storytelling, be it in television or even in children's books or even in any other visual format. I think my first experience with comics officially was Disney Adventures. It was either 94 or 95. It was sometime in the mid 90s. And I had picked up my first issue of, or my parents had picked up my first issue of Disney Adventures. And they used to have the old Disney Afternoon comics that used to be printed regularly there. And I think that was one of my earliest exposures to comics that I can
Mhm.
remember. And I think around that time or shortly later, I was exposed to the Sonic comics from Archie Comics Publishing back in the day. And they were tie-ins to the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, abbreviated Sonic Sat AM, that
Mhm.
aired in conjunction with Adventures of Sonic. Um, in addition to those, I think what also grabbed my attention was the early comic strips like Garfield and Peanuts. And I just remember when I went to various book fairs, like you remember those old Scholastic book fairs that took
Oh,
you to the
absolutely.
classrooms?
Yes.
Yeah. One of my earliest memories of collecting, of getting my own comic, I think, was at one of those book fairs.
Love that.
Um, I can't say for sure, but I do remember trying to get a copy of Garfield comics at
Mm.
one of those book fairs at some point, and I remember trying to get them every single time I was there.
Yeah, or were you talking to an educator, a former librarian? So there's a lot there that connects with me as well. And I noticed that you create in your own world, you create fan art. I'm curious about what comics allow you to do in terms of telling stories and what you like to explore.
Yeah. Um, Comics allowed me to experiment with a variety of genres, and um they allowed me to experiment with said genres, and when crafting stories they allowed me to sort of thumbnail and experiment with a wide variety of camera angles. I remember there was one comic that I illustrated for my MFA thesis. It was all written and illustrated by me,
Hmm.
and I was really trying to push the limits of what I could do with camera work in action with fight scenes. Um, and that's what I think it really compelled me in crafting that one specific comic. And I'm thinking about self-publishing it since I had used it for my MFA thesis for the future at some point. Okay. So when it comes to different story ideas for comics, I try to study other genres in other
Hmm.
visual
Hmm.
mediums because I'm hoping to try to get a full understanding of the subject matter that I'm trying to communicate in a subject matter that I'm trying to understand. Um, Comics, I think, allows me to explore those genres because if I haven't written for it yet, I can try to practice emulating it in a outline and then a thumbnailed outline as best as possible.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's even the best part of comics is that it allows me to practice thumbnailing, practice planning out how a shot looks like, and it even translates really well to when, say, if I'm storyboarding for animation, I can you take the lessons of boarding and pre-planning and apply it to storyboarding for animation or for storyboarding for independent work or for short films. It allows me to try to get a good grasp of where the camera is. Like there's like the rule of three shots where there's one, two, three, one like diagonal lines,
Hmm.
or the quadrant angle where it allows you to work with four individual spaces to try to figure out the composition.
Yeah, I'm also a film fan, so I connect a lot with visuals and comics to film. And uh, curious about, you mentioned you'd done another interview recently, so I'm curious about some of your most positive experiences, collaborations, and contributions so far.
All right. Um, One of my favorite accomplishments and experiences was creating the Amelia Enmity mini comics in 2017 and 2019. Um, Fun fact, and I hope I'm not overblowing or overemphasizing the importance of this person who is very influential in comics. I was inspired to try to create Amelia Enmity webcomics on a monthly basis back in
Hmm.
that time because a comic writer on Twitter was asking people what they're planning to doing for comics,
Hmm.
and I teased I was going to try to create my own monthly webcomic, and it was I think it was Kirk Busaic, and he subtweeted me saying, "Just get right on it, dude." It was like just a little bit of encouragement, and that encouragement basically propelled me to give it my best shot. And I had started creating my first webcomic in February. I mean, it was published in early February, and then in March, and then April, and then June, July, August, October, September, October, November, December, and then and then more until I think June of 2018. And then I started self-publishing my own more Amelia Emily comics, but for my MFA of September 2018 to May 2019.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. I had used them for my MFA first year of my MFA thesis, not thesis, first year of my MFA visual arts program. And I think my favorite is still Amelia Enmity Survives Gym Class because it it categorized my experience with bullying in gym, and I wanted to outline those feelings in a healthy, positive way as much as I could.
So awesome. Yeah. Art and creating is great for that. That's an idea I try to get across to my students is that, storytelling exists in part so we could share a story, but also so we could process and uh, revisit experiences and turn them into something positive.
Absolutely. Um, Other collaboration and experiences that I did go through during my art career. I think I mentioned before that I was interviewed with I think another YouTube channel.
Hmm.
It's not a YouTube channel, it's an independent comics organization that was just recently started called Columbus Cartoon Coalition. In 2022, I was in heavy network mode because I had just graduated from my MFA. I was looking for jobs anywhere I could because the pandemic had, to my understanding, democratized networking to an extent.
Hmm.
And I had joined the club in good faith to contribute and help try to make a difference. And they were putting out an anthology, and I had submitted a few comics to them. One of them included Amelia Enmity in the mix, And others included like group projects, like create your own interpretation of this comic page. And in 2023 and 2024, it was more or less the same. In 2023, I contributed 2 pages to a interpret this page to your own artistic understanding. And my favorite part of that was getting to try to emulate the style of Jack Kirby just for fun. And I was trying to make it feel like the Fantastic Four comic
Mm-hmm.
because I really wanted to experiment with Kirby's art style, and I really wanted to see the Fantastic Four, or at least do my artistic interpretation of what I think it would have looked like.
Yeah, yeah. Such a great lineage of creators. And again, I'm thinking about some of the fan art that I've seen you do and some of the responses that I've seen you make. Any other influences that you'd like to mention before we get to that final question or two?
Oh, sure. I think other influences that really inspired me to become a comic artist and illustrator. There was the Darkwing Duck comics that were published by in 2010 into 2011, and then
Hmm.
again in 2014, 2015, 16, and 17. Could be wrong about 2017, but they were illustrated by James Silvani, and I think the writer's credit of that time was Aaron Sparrow. There was Ian Brill, who was also one of the writers, but I think there might have been a uh, logistic concern on that. So don't take my word for it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but those comics early on, they were the reason why I had kept drawing and or picked up drawing again seriously, especially when I wanted to try illustrating for comics. And in addition, following that, I began discovering other comics like Mike Mignola's Hellboy series or Mike Mignola's
Hmm.
other work and Jeff Smith's Bone and more Jack Kirby comics, specifically what he did for Captain America in the 60s for
Yeah.
Marvel. And around that time, I also was in this was more in the television side, but the person who was involved was also a comic writer and experienced in comic editing. His name is Greg Weisman. He was one of my favorite animation producers and creators.
Hmm.
He created Gargoyles for Disney, which
Yeah.
aired in 1994. And he also has worked on Spectacular Spider-Man and Young Justice. And he has also written for the Young Justice comic tie-in back in the early 2010s. And before that, before Gargoyles, he was also a writer for DC. And I think also has done some work for Marvel. Um, And what I found really inspiring about his career and his body of work is that he both specialized in both comics and TV animation, primarily as a writer, and he had a good understanding of world building and character development.
Nice, nice. Uh, Now, in terms of creative vision, creative direction, is there a project that you would love to do, a project that you would love to work on?
It's a good question. There's a ton that I had over the years. I think I would love to work on Avatar, either Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, or whatever is coming up in the works.
Hmm.
I would also love to work on Young Justice or Spectacular Spider-Man.
Nice.
I know the rights dispute between Sony and Disney make it seem unlikely, but if that show were able to make a comeback again, I would have loved to be involved. I'm practicing drawing fan art for it and other art in that genre every single day.
Yeah, I love that. I love that style and such a great sort of approach through animation and comics through the 1990s and on. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Spectacular Spider-Man and Young Justice came out in the late 2000s and early 2010s. But yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Um, let's see. Um, my other hope is that one day I would also like to work on Hey Arnold, um,
Hmm.
and also maybe Darkwing Duck, and also other some creator-owned original story ideas that I've had for a while. Um, I'd like to try to build an audience with both familiar characters and original universes that I've created, as well as Amelia Enmity again. I'm always teasing that I'm working on something with her.
Hmm.
I haven't been as consistent, but my hope is that I try to do something more consistent with her again because she's been with me since college. And
Uh,
I feel like there's something special about her, about that character, and about her friends. And I want to try to do something that honors that creative heritage, which helps launch me into comics now.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I think I have one more official question, and that is if folks are interested in seeing your work, finding out more, connecting in some way, where might they do that?
They can find me on Tumblr and Coffee and Patreon and Blue Sky. On Tumblr, you can just search me under Jeremy Fuscaldo, and on Coffee and Patreon under that same one too. You should find me, and my banner has just recently included the Turning Red, My Neighbor Totoro mashup drawing.
Seen that? Yeah.
And you can also primarily find me on jeremyfuscaldo.weebly.com. That's a new website that I had created this year, and it was created using Weebly. I had a previous website, but I decided it was time to retire it, and now this one just launched this year.
Awesome.
Launched this
Awesome.
year. Misspoke a little.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much, and glad to talk with you as you're working on things, and glad to share about your creativity.
Thank you, Jason. Pleasure to be on board.
Awesome. Awesome.